AITA for clarifying via social media posts that my wife's baby was the product of her illicit affairs? My M49 wife Cynthia F45 got pregnant against my will after we had discussed and agreed on not having any more kids. We already have F18, M13, M8, M4. I was scheduled for a vasectomy. She claimed she was on the pill, but I was using condoms because I wanted to make sure nothing happened. I had my vasectomy, but she was pregnant a few weeks later. She was overjoyed and I wasn't. I didn't want to be an old dad. She claimed the pills didn't work. I never pushed for her getting surgery because I know it's harder for women, and she said injectable contraceptives hurt her health. I checked all my condoms and all of them had been pierced. We had a huge argument that ended with her crying. My trust has been destroyed. I assume that nothing she says is true. She also got fired when she was 3 months pregnant. I found it weird that she didn't fight it. Then she said she needed to stay home, which is exactly what I dreaded. She said morning sickness was too bad to go to work. For our entire 18 years of marriage, she has pushed to be a som. We can't afford it. She gave me the silent treatment for weeks after our second was born when I said she needed to find a job. I never heard the end of it, as she calls it, when I made her leave our baby and sent her to get a job. Like I had ripped her away from our kid. I got suspicious, thinking that perhaps she had resigned and was lying. I know it's wrong, but I got into her phone. Long story short, she had a workplace affair, and she and her AP both got canned. She slept with him during her training out of state and eventually scheduled every assignment out of town to cheat with him. He is in his late 50s, married. She also slept with my cousin's son Nelson M29, and he's a drug addict. I saw and heard messages between them. He would come to my house when I was out. I have asked the neighbor, and they confirmed. My neighbor said Nelson would show up sometimes 2 days in a row when I was out. I checked my schedule and it could have been when I went to Ohio for 3 weeks. I came home on weekends, but everything seemed normal. What's worse is that Nelson calls me uncle. I let him stay over a couple of times. She also used our own kids, our 2 youngest, as leverage, promising that he could see them if he didn't pressure her, and kept his mouth shut. So she obviously put him in some type of a stepdaddy role. She told him the pregnancy was his baby. I hate him, but I think she manipulated him because he has zero relationship with his parents or his siblings, and he kept texting her about how she was like home to him. I lost it and woke her up. She tried to claim that she was sad by both men, then said she was pressured into it because they threatened her. I confronted both men. I reached out to her ex-coworker via social media, but he blocked me after a couple of exchanged messages. Nelson did get belligerent, and it could have probably ended in a real fight if I had him in front of me. The paternity test came as negative. I moved out and got a lawyer. I refused to be at the hospital during childbirth. It was a stillborn. I was shocked. Even if it wasn't mine, it felt dark and strange. I offered my kids emotional support but didn't allow her to cry to me. I had to get a court order to get a DNA test on all our kids. They are mine. A few weeks ago, people on Facebook started asking questions and attempting to call me out for not posting anything about the baby. I think she might have told someone that I wasn't present at childbirth because a couple of people came at me. We are getting a divorce, and I'm very angry that she's still trying to milk it. I told each person the truth separately, but eventually got fed up with looking like the bad guy and wrote a post saying thank you to everyone who has reached out to insult me, but the baby was not my child as per the paternity test. It had to step away from social media because of it. Her family called me asking to take it down. They didn't know the full story but said this is not how things get solved. I'm not deleting it despite being called out for shaming. While I worked my ass off for our family, she was texting her best friend and complaining about how I'm not the shadow of my former self. How I look old and let myself go. Her friend had an angry response, but they are not on speaking terms anymore. Cynthia claimed that her friend ghosted her and she doesn't know why. I'm suing for custody since she repeatedly took my kids across the state so that Nelson could hang out with them and left them with her dad before I came home from work so that she could go do work stuff and have sex outside of our marriage. She had been begging me not to ever tell the kids about the paternity test, but they needed to know the truth before she twisted the narrative. My daughter won't speak to her and our second child wants to come live with me. I'm sick of crying sporadically because sometimes I'm driving and can't hold it in. I can't even watch PRN because she and her apps come to mind. I had a family and despite everything, I was proud and happy and she took it away. I didn't know she saw me as less. She told her ex-best friend that she loved watching the executives in her job. At least her friend defended me, although we are not close. My lawyer says we should contact her as a character witness. I hate Cynthia and I told her during her pregnancy when she wanted to initiate sex. She's naturally overweight and I loved her as such, but I hated the knocked up by the AP version of her. I told her she looked grotesque like Jabba the Hutt. Her lawyer is pushing for family counseling. I would only agree to civil co-parenting but nothing oriented at couples reconciliation bullshit. She calls it a mistake, but to me, she bred via infidelity and created an entire human being, and I will never forget that. AITA for refusing to take my post down. AITA for refusing to show compassion. All I want is to get out of her life, and I feel like she's trying to keep me from moving on. Sorry if I don't make too much sense, but my mind is still foggy. Story 2. AITA for telling my daughter-in-law and son that it is too late and I will not change the family vacation plans so they can come. Every year I try to do a family vacation. Around Easter I asked everyone for their availability. The best days for almost everyone was a winter vacation. My deal and so told me that day wouldn't work for her, so they can't go. I asked if the backup days would work and it was a no. Usually the vacation is something that everyone can drive to. It was going to be the same until all the adults agreed the kids were old enough to leave the country. So now the trip is to Europe. Everyone has bought their tickets and I have booked where we are staying. Everything is getting finalized. My son and Deal were not in the family vacation chat since they weren't going on the vacation. They heard about the plans and want to be added in. She called me up asking about it and what they need to do. I asked her how she could get off work and she explained she just could. I personally think she didn't want to go on the trip until she learned it was to Europe and lied to me that she couldn't come in the first place. I told her it is too late. Things are booked and I am not willing to pay more. Then I paid for all the lodging. We would need to upgrade to fit 2 more adults. She asked if I was serious and that it is cruel to not include them on a family trip around Christmas. I told her it is what it is and it's not my fault. My son is pissed. He told me that I can afford to add 2 more adults. That is true. I reiterated what I told his wife. He called me a jerk. I want an outside opinion. Story 3. AITA for telling my ILS they shouldn't blame me when they ignored my friendly warnings. My ILS moved back in June. They had been planning this move for several months and had their house up on the market before they told my husband 24M and me 23F. They had mentioned the name of a small town they liked and were considering their one choice of location. I know the place well because it's my hometown, and I fled right as I was turning 17 and never went back there. There are 0 happy memories of my hometown for me. I was raised in one of those families. The ones that are the talk of everyone in town for all the wrong reasons. I'm the only member of my family, dad, mom, brother, who did not go to prison or get in trouble with the law. But people still hated me because of who my family was. Growing up there was hell. And the one friend I had back then got a lot of shit for being friends with me. Teachers treated her like shit. She was thrown under the bus alongside me many times. Even her family gave her crap for being friends with me. When all 3 family members were arrested together, I decided I just needed to run away and get far from there, or I'd live in literal hell until I turned 18. And I knew it would happen. My ILS always knew I came from a family that got in trouble with the law a lot. They also knew I had a bad reputation where I came from as a result. They didn't know my hometown until that came up when they mentioned their move, and I gave them a friendly heads-up warning that living there and making their association to me known would not be a great idea. Yet they would likely be treated poorly as a result. My husband suggested there were so many other places they could look at, but his parents had their hearts set. My husband and I worried for his much younger siblings who are all still in school. I knew most, if not all, my past teachers would still be there, but I had hoped they wouldn't be too open about me. They moved in June. By August they had mentioned me to some people, or some people had seen photos of me and my husband in their home, and when my siblings-in-law started school. It wasn't great. They found it hard to make friends. One Bill was denied a place on the football team. Parents don't want their kids associating with them. They also notice neighbors are less friendly. They don't get the same chit-chat they liked when they first moved. And they heard a lot of hate about my family, the kids especially. And now my ILS my husband's parents are mad at me, and they acted like I didn't warn them. I reminded them that I did give them a friendly warning and they couldn't say I didn't, so they shouldn't blame me. My husband had my back on that and told them the same. They told me I shouldn't be saying any "I told you so's" when my husband's siblings are negatively impacted. The funny sad part is my husband's siblings aren't mad. It just made them sad for me. AITA